I'm going to transition right into the work-life balance talk. And when I was first approached and asked to give this speech and kind of talking about it, what kept hitting me in the face was this phrase I use all the time of how do you fill your plate, or what do you have on your plate, or keeping a full plate. So kind of the theme I want to offer up to you today is you only get one plate. And that's the way this works in life. Is this isn't a go back buffet. You only get one plate, but guess what? It's up to you on how you want to fill that plate. I do want to preface it by saying I'm self-employed, and that's the perspective I come from. So there are a lot of folks in the group today, whether you're mortgage or you work, in life insurance or something like that, that you create your own schedule, you work for yourself, you're not punching in and punching out per se. That's the perspective I bring to this, for better or worse. So when it comes to balance, that's some of the freedom involved with, in my case, being a real estate agent. And I think that leads into maybe what makes those of us in the group that are good real estate agents, which is all of them here today, why we're good is we can manage our time and kind of take on the personal responsibility of no one telling you, you need to punch in at this time, you need to do these activities today, because no 2 days in my last 15 years have looked exactly the same. So I think maybe the greatest thing that scares people, like I talked about at the beginning, can be your greatest strength if you turn it that way, and being able to create your own schedule. The big thing with real estate, some of the statistics, and I might have thrown those out last month, is there's an 80% fail rate in the first 2 years. And I think just being mindful of that, figuring out, okay, how do I get into that 20%? How do I stay into that 20% that make it? And what kind of activities get involved with that, and kind of budgeting your time in that perspective. In regards to filling your plate, which I actually brought a literal plate today, how are you going to portion out kind of what goes onto your plate? And for me, what led me into real estate, in addition for wanting to work for myself and not having a corporate kind of boss telling me how to dictate my work life, is I wanted to be able to absolutely put family first and say, no matter what, if my kids have an activity, if there's a family event come up, I can say I'm going to that. I grew up in a household where both my parents worked for employers. I guess my mom was self-employed, but she had her duties, and she had to be at home basically every day from 8 to 4 or 5, and there was no getting around that. And they struggled to get to my activities as a kid and get to my sister's activities. And I just knew, even growing up, I watched it, and I watched my dad struggle like hell to get off to go to a football game on a Friday night for me, and said, I'm going to figure out a way around that where it's not a struggle. It's like the kids' activities are the things I absolutely won't miss. And what's it going to take to get there? So for me, in terms of this plate right here, family is the biggest portion. And that's where everything started. Everything else falls after that. For me personally, and I guess the advice I would throw out to people is really just peg out what the biggest and most important aspects of your life are. And for me, it really just comes down to a few groups. Family and personal is a group by itself. And then for me, like my work, my professional work, my networking, my volunteer time, they all kind of funnel under the same group, and there are a lot of the same activities. And then beyond that, it's friends and hobbies. And I heard someone earlier today talk about how, like, breaking up their day, they would just go for a rollerblade ride for a little while. That's perfect. That's decompressing. And that my working out too, I have a set schedule where I work out at least 3 times a week at the same time, at the same place, with the same people. And I've made it a part of my routine. And actually it's been a way to decompress and turn things off. We talk work a little bit if the topic comes up, but it's been a really good break in my day. And kind of, I've created my own schedule where, in my case, I'll wear a ball cap and sweats to the office in the morning and hammer out emails and be on the phone. And as long as I don't have to be on a video, no one would ever know. And then I go work out and get showered for the day. And it's usually the second half of my day where I'm more client facing. And that's just been a little bit of a trend in my schedule, but it's not always that way. So, having those 3 kind of portion things, I guess the one thing I want to illustrate to you too is what kind of plate are you going to have? My plate, personally speaking, is going to look like this. And why that's the case is a lot of my events overlap on each other. So for example, my friend group has been a lot of people that I had started out with just via networking, whether it's, chamber friends and things like that. Now I'm socializing with them, and we pass business referrals back and forth, and we're growing each other's business, but we don't even think of it that way because these are just the people we're hanging out with when we're not working. But it grew from a relationship of networking. And things can overlap in that regard. No different than when you have kids and you're doing family time, those parents you're around become your network. So my plate would look awfully messy, and things would be piled up on top of each other, and some of the family stuff would be overlapping with the work pile, and hobbies would be over in kind of work and networking and things like that. So mine would be a big mess. Literally and figuratively speaking, this is what my wife's preferred plate is. So she does not like her food to touch, and she is not afraid of you knowing that. So I bought these and I kept them at home one year at Thanksgiving because she would lose it when her different Thanksgiving food items would touch each other. So I'm throwing her under the bus, but this is her Thanksgiving fancy plate. And this is the way she kind of segments her life too. Even as a business owner and a salon owner, she can go to the salon, she can work with her clients, she can deal with her employees. And when she goes home, for the most part, she can check out and that can be the end of it. She wasn't setting a lot of appointments or things like that from home. That's done, via the phone lines at the office. People are dealt with there because all the realtors and other self-employed people in the room know you're accessible 24 hours a day when you have one of these in your hand, for better or worse. So then it's just up to you in terms of setting boundaries and when people can reach out to you. So if you get a text at 5 o'clock in the morning and you reply to it, guess what? You've just told them it's okay to text me at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'm starting my business hours at that day, and now I'm accessible to you. So it's okay to create boundaries and kind of set expectations right away of what this professional relationship is going to go like. So knowing what kind of plate you have, how you separate your things, and if they're going to overlap or not, that's going to have a lot to do with your balance. Obviously, too, you want to have a little bit of everything, no different than in your diet. I'm thinking of Donna Rourke in the background right now, talking about portion sizes, colorful plates, a little bit of everything. I mean, that's balance right there too, right? I mean, find the things that make you happy and go do those. You can't work all of the time. I found that out at a very early age, although I enjoy work. And to this day, like I invest in my work, and that's where I kind of dig away. I mean, when I've had some bad, I went to work the day my dad died. I guess I don't know any other way to put that to people. And to some, that sounds crazy, but that's where I needed to be. Like I could go and bury myself and kind of get away from it for a little while and bury myself in my work, for better or not. So for me, that was an okay thing to do. For some, they would think that's absolutely crazy and they would never consider that for a second. So just remember, if things do overlap and you use the plate like I do, your plate can get messy. Things cannot look pretty. If you put too much on your plate, obviously things can overflow and things can fall off, i.e. you might forget things. If you put too much on your plate, you're probably not going to feel very good. The example for me was kind of figuring out the whole distance learning thing the last 3 months. Like I said, I mean, my work didn't stop. We were still deemed essential. I still had transactions in process. We were still working with clients. But we had kids we had to get started on their school day and things like that and kind of get them through school successfully. So my plate was a big old mess for March, April, and May. If you have a divider plate, obviously, you're keeping everything separated. It's clean, but there's not as much space. You probably can't fit quite as much on here. So you have to kind of really break things apart. And obviously there's transition time between them. And then the one thing to really keep in mind with a divider plate is, do you eat all of this and then do you move to this one and this one and this one? My brother-in-law is a weirdo like that, where he'll only eat his meat and then he'll eat his fries and then he'll eat his salad or whatever the order is. Or do you take bites and move around and hop around throughout the day? And I'm not here to tell you on that one whether that's right or wrong. You just have to know for you, what type of eater or balancer are you in this case. Just a couple of really quick tips that I've found beneficial in terms of maintaining balance. I use the Notes app on my phone, and that's one I've just added lately. So literally, I mean, I'll be in the middle of a task with client A on the computer, and I'll get a text from client B. And like a text message, for example, if you get 10 over the course of an hour, they just get pushed down, and there's no necessary reminder that you have to go back and, pay attention to that. Versus like an email, I'll mark an email as unread, and then I remember, every couple of hours to go back and look at my unread emails. So I use that Notes basically as my to-do list, like my task list. Here's the things you have to get done, easy to edit and easy to update at any point. Calendar reminders are huge for me. Obviously, I'm setting appointments. I mean, like little things like don't forget to pay your mortgage is a calendar reminder for me. And then I'll even email myself sometime. If I'm out with a client and they ask me, a random question that I'm going to have to go research, I'll email it to myself right there from my phone and I'll tell them that I'm doing it. So the other big thing I've done with my life is I've obviously started to delegate. It took me a long time to ask for help and hire help. So I think I was 8 years into my career by the time I first hired an assistant, which quite honestly was just way too long at that point. I had kids at that point and my business kind of plateaued. So it was either my business was going to have to plateau and stay that way, which wasn't acceptable for me. My family life was going to have to suffer, which wasn't acceptable to me. So I brought on help, and at that point, and obviously Linda takes care of a lot of the day-to-day operations for myself and my team. So it's okay to ask for help, delegate, or share your food. That's okay too. So, and then the last thing I really wanted to bring out there is setting up those realistic expectations. You know, having open communications with your family. I was really lucky because I was in real estate before I met my wife, and my wife grew up in a real estate family, so she knew what the lifestyle looked like. So I tell her all the time, you knew what you were getting yourself into and you still agreed to marry me. So I was lucky in that regard. She gets it, because this, for all the realtors in the room today, it's a weird lifestyle. I mean, you might be down at, dinner with your family, which is fine, and the phone rings or a text message comes through, and it might be a big sale opportunity, or it might be something that can wait a little bit, and just kind of having that understanding that dad might get up from the dinner table and take a 5-minute phone call and come back to a cold plate, but that's just kind of the way it is. So, and at the same time, you set the expectations on that end with your family of what life is going to look like. But it's okay to set expectations with your clients too. And maybe the hardest pill that I swallowed in the last handful of years is getting to a point in my career where I started saying no. It was scary as hell. Like, no one's going to want to work with me if I don't, concede to their every demand and wish. But I started saying no, and learned that was okay. And I think I'm still working on it, but I'm at a point now where it's okay to say no to business. It's okay to say no to a demand. It's just okay. So there is a point where your plate gets entirely too full. I'm not sure what that looks like yet. I'm the last person to give you advice on that, but I guess I'll leave you with that at this point. I didn't monitor the chat at all, Kaylee. If there was anything specific I should address, I'd be happy to, but that's all I've got.